As we close read our text today, we will be looking for clues that can help us describe some of our characters in depth. Some examples we can use are what characters are doing or saying, or we can look for specific events that can help provide some descriptive details for us. Our focus for reading is to take a closer look at some of our characters to describe them in depth. This is a fictional text, specifically a fantasy. I knew that because of the pictures that were drawn. That is a clue to help me understand that this is a fictional text. Follow along as I read How Dorothy Saved the Scarecrow, an excerpt from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. The Wizard of Oz 1939 is one of the most popular films of all time. It is based on a series of popular children's novels written in the early 1900s. The excerpt here is from Chapter 3 of the first book, entitled The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The story so far. A cyclone has whisked away young Dorothy and her dog Toto inside her Kansas farmhouse to the magical land of Oz. The house landed on the Wicked Witch of the East, killing her and thereby setting free the Munchkins. The grateful Munchkins send Dorothy to the Wizard of Oz in Emerald City. After she gets there, Dorothy hopes the wizard will help her get back home. In this chapter, Dorothy has set off on the Yellow Brick Road and meets the Scarecrow. Paragraph 1. Dorothy bade her friends goodbye and again started along the road of yellow brick. When she had gone several miles, she thought she would stop to rest, and so she climbed to the top of the fence beside the road and sat down. There was a great cornfield beyond the fence, and not far away she saw a scarecrow placed high on a pole to keep the birds from the ripe corn. Dorothy leaned her chin upon her hand and gazed thoughtfully at the scarecrow. Its head was a small sack stuffed with straw, with eyes, nose, and mouth painted on it to represent a face. An old pointed blue hat that had belonged to some munchkin was perched on his head, and the rest of the figure was a blue suit of clothes, worn and faded, which had also been stuffed with straw. On the feet were some old boots with blue tops, such as every man wore in this country, and the figure was raised above the stalks of corn by means of the pole stuck up its back. Since our purpose for reading is to look at the characters more in depth, my annotations are going to be focused around what the characters do or say to help me think about words or phrases that I would use to describe them. In paragraph 1, I underlined the part where she said goodbye to the Munchkins or her friends and started along the yellow brick road. She was kind enough to say goodbye to them because we knew that she was on this journey and she was going along the yellow brick road on her own. So I thought that she was brave in a sense or very courageous because she was taking this journey to find the wizard all on her own. Then in paragraph 2, this is the part where she looks up at the scarecrow, and I know that she was admiring the work that the scarecrow had on him. So I thought that that was very kind or thoughtful of her. So that's how I interpreted my thoughts on Dorothy at this time. I've created this to help me organize my thinking and keep track of the words I think of to describe Dorothy. Right now, I wrote down that she's brave and thoughtful based off what we just read. If you would like to add any words that you thought of, feel free to. We will come back to this as we continue reading. Now that we are introduced to the scarecrow at this point, I color coded my annotations so that I can differentiate who I am referring to. So my green circles and underlining are meant for what I thought of for the scarecrow, whereas the pink is more for Dorothy. So I'm going to talk about the scarecrow right now. In paragraph 4, I underlined the part where it says the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. I know that this, in my head, makes me think of someone who is nice and friendly, because if that scarecrow would have scared her instead, that wouldn't have been so nice. So the fact that he greeted her in a kind and friendly way made me think that the scarecrow was friendly. So I underlined that. Then, if you jump to paragraph 11, I wrote down the part where he mentions that he would be so gratefully obliged to her. This, for me, shows me that the scarecrow seems genuine. Now, genuine is a person that seems very truthful and sticks to their word. So the fact that the scarecrow says that he would just be super grateful if Dorothy was able to help him out, I really think that he meant that. So I think that he was a genuine person or scarecrow in this sense. Let's now finish the second half of the text. Paragraph 4. While Dorothy was looking earnestly into the odd, painted face of the scarecrow, she was surprised to see one of the eyes slowly wink at her. She thought she must have been mistaken at first, for none of the scarecrows in Kansas ever wink. But presently, the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. Then she climbed down from the fence and walked up to it, while Toto ran around the pole and barked. "Good day," said the scarecrow in a rather husky voice. "Did you speak?" asked the girl in wonder. "Certainly," answered the scarecrow. "How do you do?" "I'm pretty well, thank you," replied Dorothy politely. "How do you do?" "I'm not feeling well," said the scarecrow with a smile, "for it is very tedious being perched up here night and day to scare away crows." "Can't you get down?" asked Dorothy. "No, for this pole is stuck up my back. If you will please take away the pole, I shall be greatly obliged to you." Dorothy reached up both arms and lifted the figure off the pole, for, being stuffed with straw, it was quite light. "Thank you very much," said the scarecrow, when he had been set down on the ground. "I feel like a new man." Dorothy was puzzled at this, for it sounded odd to hear a stuffed man speak, and to see him bow and walk along beside her. Now let's take a look at Dorothy. Remember, the pink circles and underlining is my annotation specifically for Dorothy. In paragraph 4, I underlined the part where Dorothy walked up to the scarecrow after it winked and nodded at her. To me, that reconfirmed that Dorothy is brave, because I don't know if I would be willing to walk up to something that just winked at me. So, in my opinion, I think Dorothy is brave for walking up to it. Another word that I thought of in this moment was curious. The fact that she was willing to take a look and discover what the scarecrow was doing, I think that someone is curious in that moment. Now jumping to paragraph 12, this is the part where Dorothy tries to lift the scarecrow off of the pole. In this moment, I think that Dorothy is helpful because she wants to help the scarecrow with this situation. Now that we finished the first half of our text, I'm going to pause again to look back at my two characters, Dorothy and Scarecrow. Here, I am focusing on Scarecrow. However, you are more than welcome to add more words into the Dorothy slide. The word I wrote down for Scarecrow was that he was friendly, because if we look back, I do have evidence to support my thinking. Feel free to add any more words into your text that supports your thoughts on how you would describe the Scarecrow. Now that I've collected my thoughts with the Scarecrow, I'm going to take that information and write it down into complete sentences. My sentences say, I think that the Scarecrow is friendly because in the text it says, but presently the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. This supports my thinking because it shows me how kindly the Scarecrow first introduced himself to Dorothy. Notice how some of my texts are in different colors. Taking a look at my orange, at the very beginning you should always explain to readers and share what your answer or thinking is. That's where I first mentioned my opinion about the Scarecrow being friendly. Then in the blue, I wrote down the specific text evidence to support my answer. That's where I wrote, but presently the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. Notice how I use quotation marks. That lets the readers know that it comes directly from a different source, or in this case, comes from my story. Then, the green is where I explain why I chose that text evidence. It's important that you explain to readers how your sentence or text evidence supports your thinking. Now that I shared with you my example of the Scarecrow, I would like you to try it out on your own. Think about one of the words that you used to describe Dorothy based off what we've read. Use the format below to help guide your thinking. You can erase the lines that are provided for you and change the color. Refer back to the previous slide to help you. I know you've got this. Great job today. We will continue reading the last part of our text to gather more information to continue to describe our characters.